What's up, people? How you guys doing, man? It's Ronald. Please shooting you a quick video. What I was gonna talk about was the NBA playoffs. So basically, to shoot a quick review, we're gonna talk about the Golden State Warriors in Portland. How, especially Golden State Warriors mainly, how Portland beat Golden State. And their worst loss was to Portland, who pulled off an impressive win. Portland has had an impressive season so far. Everyone thought they were going to be below 500. I thought they were going to be below 500. After looking at how they start off very slow, but then they pick it up at the end and finish strong. So that's what I saw. And then the next run with Golden State, who were a 73-9 team, they finished off completely fast and aggressive at the end, and they were a young athletic team. So here's the problem to this. So let me jump straight to the point. I know I was on one subject, but I'm going to jump straight to the point. If the San Antonio Spurs were facing the Golden State Warriors, I was hoping for the clash of the Titans. I did want that to happen, especially Spurs finished off 67-15. They got a mixture of young and old, experienced players, but the problem is they were missing their shots, and that's what happened. OKC was the better athletic team and younger team with Westbrook and Durant. They're in their 20s. They're still in their 20s. They're still in the prime of their career. So, the thing that got to me was how the Spurs played. OKC finished them off in 6. They didn't finish them off in 7, which I'll be like, okay, that was pretty impressive. They finished them off in 6. The biggest flaw in the game was the Spurs were missing their shots. And that was the problem. That's how they lost in 6. The games were getting closer and closer, and the Spurs blew them out and won. So I think one thing they need to do is kind of like, I think it has to be something with the practice intensity for half the players. Because half the players are old. Like Duncan, Ginobili, and Tony Parker. So one thing they do need is like to really work on, maybe the practice intensity. Because they did kind of look broken down. It looked sluggish. That's why the games were getting closer and closer until game 6. They got sluggish and they broke down as well. So that's one thing I could say to that. So one thing, I don't know if that was it, or I don't know what, but the most part, what I saw in Game 6, they missed shots. If they made shots, they could at least try to outscore OKC, because OKC looked like an outscoring team throughout, because half the time the Spurs had open shots. Other times, OKC did play their defense, but half the time, OKC was they just scored better than San Antonio. They outscored them very, very successfully. And that's how they blew them out. So that's what I got to say to that. And for the most part, that's why they fell apart. So now the Spurs got to figure out how they're going to work on their shooting for next year. Because they're a team that just don't go down. They go down at one point and then they just bounce back the year after. Especially after getting knocked out of the first round against Memphis. I was like one of the most surprising upsets that I ever saw. Nobody thought Memphis was going to beat San Antonio. And then the year after, they made the conference finals. The year after, they made the finals. And then after, they won it. So, I don't know. They're a team that can just go after and get things done when they need to. They don't go down easily. So, hopefully they can get something figured out for next year. That's what I got to say for that. Because that's the team you could say this always next year. Other teams are not as consistent as San Antonio. Unless they plan to keep them as consistent. So, that's what I hope for the most part. And that's what I gotta say to that, for the least of it. So I gotta say that. Moving on, I know in 23 minutes it's gonna be the Heat and the Raptors. So after the Cavs sweep Atlanta, they're gonna be still chilling and figure out who they're gonna face on Tuesday, because Heat and Raptors Game 7. Let me say to this: the Raptors do have experienced players, but the Heat have experienced playoff players, like Dwayne Wade. Both teams are sure-handed, but however, Dwayne Wade knows how to get it done. DeMar Carroll, they have a good player in DeMar Carroll, DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, and Biyombo. But the Heat have such great depth all around, and that's going to be the tough part. So if the Heat does win this game, I would be upset because I want Toronto to because Toronto had a historic regular season record. They had a historic playoff run after knocking out Indiana, even though it was barely. So I kind of had a feeling that he was going to take Toronto to the limit. But it's going to hurt me so much whether Raptors win or lose because their toughest challenge is going to be Cleveland. Raptors, if they barely survive the first round and then this round, how are they going to survive Cleveland? Especially with their star player in LeBron James. He knows how to strengthen the team and get things done. That's going to be their toughest part. LeBron will just blew them out of the water. But one thing I could say to that is, if Toronto can put on good chemistry and work on that, then they could probably take Cleveland to the limit, take them to 7 at least. But other than that, Cleveland might sweep them again. But they're like the last 2 or 3 teams that had swept 2 teams twice. The Heat in 2004, 2005, they swept 2 teams in a row. They got knocked out in 6. The second team, Cleveland Cavaliers, 3 years later in 2009, swept 2 teams in a row, knocked out by Orlando. The Spurs, same thing in 2012, they got knocked out by OKC. So, if they could somehow knock them off, but I know LeBron James was probably training intensely midway through that so they don't get rusty, Cleveland's going to the finals. That's what I got to say to that. Even with the Heat taking it all, even with the Heat, taking on LeBron, that would be a good matchup. It would be a great story because it's going to be LeBron against his former team, the Heat. Because Cleveland never went to the playoffs after LeBron left. And they missed the playoffs 4 years in a row. Until LeBron came back, they missed the playoffs. They almost made the playoffs. And the Cleveland was going to still continue to rebuild without LeBron. They looked like they're ready to move on. But just like that, LeBron came back to Cleveland. But that's besides the point. But for the most part, will LeBron James, taking on his former team, the Heat, and Dwayne Wade, it will be a great matchup. I think it's going to be a lot different now because Dwayne Wade actually played with LeBron, so he's probably going to know him more. So the Heat may go to the finals. It could be a David and Goliath matchup between Golden State and Heat, or it could be OKC and Miami Heat 4 years later. Who knows? But for the definitely most part, I think Golden State is going to the finals, and it may be the Heat take on Cleveland, but Toronto may pull off the win if they can play smart. They need to make smart moves, smart decisions, play slow, really put yourself in chess mode, not checker mode, and then try to pull off the win against the Heat. That's what I got to say to that. If they can stop Dwayne Wade as well, Dwayne Wade, McRoberts, and Joe Johnson, those are their key threats, then they'll be good. They'll be good. Toronto will be good. So that's what I got to say to that. I'm going for Toronto, even though I'm wearing a Celtics hat right now. But one thing I could say to that is, hopefully the game goes very great. So that's one thing I got to say to that, man. So hopefully I catch you guys later. Enjoy the NBA playoffs, and peace out.